there's been so many times where I'm out in public and I'm just like madly blinking because I'm about to touch my face with my hand to like get an eyelash or something out of my eye.
And you're like,
and then
don't
I stop
touch my
myself.
face. Yeah.
So then I'm just walking around with this hand hovering in front of my face and madly
and you're like
blinking
weirdly, and everyone's like, are you on some kind of weird drug trip? Do you need medical resistance?
Welcome. You are entering a strange realm. A realm of what ifs. What if movies, television shows, and video games were better, worse, bizarrer, or downright different? What might they look like? Find out on today's episode of CineCasters.
Welcome back to CineCasters. This is the show where we watch movies and then pitch them back to each other to try and change them up or change them around and maybe fix some issues that we had with them as we try and talk through them and then come up with our own ideas. My name is Janglez, and I'm joined by Nathaniel.
Yes, hi.
Or Nate.
That was a great, that was a great like run-on sentence intro.
I love my run-on sentences. You should talk to my editor about my run-on sentences. So today we're looking at the first of, I guess, our Christmas lead-up classics with Nathaniel's very favorite movie, one that we spoke about last year and we're finally getting around to it. We're going to be talking about Elf.
Oh, yes. This is my definite favorite Christmas movie. I love it so much.
Yeah. So, why did you pick Elf then?
Why did I pick Elf?
Yeah, I picked Elf.
You were the one who said we should watch it this week.
I knew your feelings about Elf, so I was the one who chose it. But when I say why pick Elf, I mean like run me through your thought process. You think this is like not only the worst Christmas movie ever, but just like a bad movie.
I think there's a lot of things not working for this movie. It's funny. I mean, when I saw it in theaters. I think I saw it in theaters when it first came out, which I would have been like, I don't know, 11 or 12. I thought it was really funny. And I think between then and the last time I saw it was about 2 or 3 years ago. Yeah, the last time I saw it, I went, this is not anywhere near as funny as I remember or nearly remotely watchable. My biggest, I'm going to try and be nice. Because I think Jon Favreau is actually a pretty good filmmaker, and I have a lot of respect for him.
I have a lot of respect for him. I mean, he single-handedly started the MCU.
Yeah.
With Iron Man, which is, I mean, regardless of how you feel about the MCU, which I am not a huge fan, Iron Man, the first Iron Man is, I think, a really good movie on its own.
Yeah. No, exactly. Like, I think he's a good filmmaker.
And then he single-handedly saved Star Wars with The Mandalorian.
Yeah,
after the travesty that was The Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, that was fun. I quite like Jon Favreau. This movie, I don't like. But the reason I don't like it, the reason I think it doesn't work as a movie, it's super, super cringy, which is funny for me because I actually really like cringe humor.
I know you do.
But this is just uncomfortable. It's just not even funny. I'll try to think of an example. A lot of it, because I think in shows like The Office where there's cringe humor, a lot of it I think is offset by characters who are there who are able to at least recognize that, okay, this is a little out there. There's something about it that's at least has a bit more self-awareness. With Elf, I just felt like I was watching somebody do really gross, inappropriate things, and there wasn't really any like punchline to it. There wasn't anything that was leading into the next, like one joke led into the next thing. And specifically, okay, I'm going to back out from the humor for a second. A, I just didn't find it funny. B, in terms of the story, the way it's constructed is each scene is there's just a series of vignettes where things are supposed to be funny, but there's no sense of one thing leads to the next. And why why I say that is because specifically there's no character logic. The characters do not do anything that, in my opinion, makes any sense. Even in a world where, let's suppose, the North Pole is a real place and Santa Claus is real. Okay, so the Zooey Deschanel character, I don't understand why she decided to like go on a date with.
I don't understand her character at all.
No,
she has no arc.
Yeah.
But that's the case with most of the characters. The only character who actually has any arc is actually, what's his name? Buddy's dad,
Walter. Yeah, and which is again very poorly constructed.
Absolutely.
I did not buy his decision to walk out of work at the very end. It's so sudden. There was no reason for him to do that.
Like the implication is that he's all of a sudden listening to his son Michael. But he's never really listened to Michael before, so what was the change?
Exactly. And okay, this is just another thing, a personal thing. I just can't stand it when the point of the movie is, or where the solution to the problem is Christmas spirit.
Yeah, Christmas spirit,
whatever the fuck that is. Maybe this is my own personal baggage from working on Christmas movies. But yeah, if that's the solution, I just find it so mindless and stupid.
But there's nothing to it. It doesn't mean anything. Like, what is Christmas spirit, right? Well, it's the season of giving, or it's family, or it's holidays. It's literally whatever you want it to mean, which means it's meaningless.
Exactly. Thank you. You've put it in words quite nicely.
I understand, like, the idea. It's supposed to be that feeling, that warmth, that thing that we all feel around Christmas when you're there, when it's happening. But unless you can put that into words, and maybe the case is that it means different things to different people, and that's fine if that's the point of your movie. But if the point of your movie is like, it's this amorphous thing that we can all point to and have some kind of cultural reference as to what it is, but we can't explain what it is, then you haven't done anything useful. You haven't said anything.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's an empty message. Also, it hasn't really, even though the whole movie takes place around Christmas and the characters are in this like Christmas universe, it actually has nothing to do with the story.
Well, Santa Claus getting Christmas cheer when he crashes is basically just a MacGuffin, but it's
purely tangential. It has nothing to do with, like, to me, the real crux of the movie is it's a guy who's found out that he found out who his real identity is, found out who his real father is, and is trying to have a relationship with his father.
Yeah.
But there is nothing in that where Christmas or having Christmas spirit was a factor in that. And so what happens at the end of the movie is you have the James Caan character, Walter, go through this transformation. He's changed. And now you have this other problem that comes out of falls out of the sky
and now we need Christmas
Park.
spirit to save it. Yeah, I noticed that too, because there's a point where Michael, Walter's son, younger son, actually basically just goes like, Buddy cares about everybody. You only care about yourself. And I was like, is that the thesis of the movie? Because I thought this was a Christmas movie, and at the end it sort of feels like, oh, it's Christmas spirit. That's the thesis, and you're sort of like, I don't get it. Like, what's the point?
Exactly.
If there's a point to have this change of heart, it kind of reminds me of Jungle to Jungle.
I'm not familiar with that
Tim
one.
Allen finds out he has a kid, and the kid goes back to New York to live with Tim Allen for a little bit, and the kid's like, it's the same story. It's literally the same story, except Tim Allen plays the dad.
Oh, okay.
And the kid's from the jungle instead of from the North Pole. Like, I don't know if it's Amazon or whatever. It's not really important. Okay. It's probably a little bit appropriative anyway. But
this sounds vaguely familiar.
Yeah. Anyway, so then this kid goes to the jungle or goes to New York. That's why it's Jungle to Jungle, like from the jungle to the city, concrete jungle. Anyway,
right.
And then begins to work with Tim Allen, but Tim Allen has to have a change of heart about like work and whatnot. So Tim Allen's the main character more so than the kid. And once the change of heart happens, that's sort of the climax of the movie, as opposed to this one where we have this change of heart and then the climax.
Yeah, exactly.
Like this whole Santa thing is Christmas spirit comes from what? Or what has to do with what? What does this have to do with Walter and Buddy?
Yeah, because Walter started singing, it was just enough to get out of Central Park.
Bullshit.
Yeah, exactly. I think the other thing too is I'm also just, it's very New York centric, which is, this is actually not necessarily a criticism on the movie. Maybe I'm just so bored with it. I'm like, there's other places in the world besides New York. Why is it always New York?
I think the reason is because New York is like stereotypically seen as this place of like destroyed spirit, dreams, and potential. Like that's the place where downtrodden people are from. Like it's this dirty kind of gritty. That's the zeitgeist. I don't necessarily think New York is actually that way.
They've never been to Toronto.
Oh snap! Toronto is just literally New York North. It's just colder because we have lake effect, snowier because we have lake effect, and smaller and with less things to do. So if like that's what Toronto is in my mind.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I still love it. I say it. I make these jokes lovingly.
Oh man, I love living close to Toronto because then I can go see concerts. I just am not a city person. That's where that comes from.
Totally fair. Fair enough.
Yeah, that's my point there is, so I think that's the reason why things get set in New York. Because like if you're like, oh, let's do Christmas in Paris. Well, Paris is the city of lights. It's the city of romance. Like it's not going to be the same kind of like cultural or kind of referential geography. When you say New York, it's like, oh, that's gritty, that's business, right? When you say Paris, it's like, that's romance, that's lights, even though Paris is a dirty city.
Well, I think that's it too. Like I think that to me is what's so funny is you go to any city, any city has a sort of reputation, but you go to any of them and you're going to find something really that they're all very similar. Really.
Well, in Europe, there's like different standards for how clean cities were. When I spent time in Vienna, the city was like incredibly clean, like spooky clean. The streets are like swept. And like everything is like almost pristine in this really weird way. They did the same thing in Amsterdam too. They would like clean the leaves off of the like in the parks. They would rake the leaves. So not just on the pathway. They would just, every week they would clean up the leaves. Whereas like in Canada, we would be like, nah, man, that's part of the nature.
Right. Yeah. Dead leaves is just kind of part of the vibe.
Anyway, apart from going on this geographical tangent, my point here is really like New York doesn't really matter geographically. It matters as like a backdrop for the setting. It sets up Walter as being like money business New York. Right.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. No, I get that, yeah. Like I said, that wasn't so much a criticism of the movie. Just as I was watching, I was thinking, like, why New York? Why are all these movies set in New York?
Because if they were like, oh, let's set it in Vancouver, everyone's going to be like, where the fuck is Vancouver?
Where is
also,
Vancouver?
Why is there no snow? Because it doesn't really snow in Vancouver.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Christmas in Portland. I want to see that movie, actually.
Yeah. Portlandia, and I'm pretty sure there was like a Christmas.
Oh, for sure.
They must have done a Christmas episode of Portlandia. Yeah. I haven't watched enough of it, obviously.
Yeah.
But let me think if. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
My big thing with this one is like you said, you called it like a series of vignettes. Mine was like, it just feels like gag to gag, but with different people. Like it's like Buddy in the city, and we'll get gags of that. Buddy on a date, we'll get gags of that. Buddy with his father, we'll get gags of that. Buddy doing business stuff. Paraphernalia and or we'll do that, you know what I mean? Like none of it is really meaningful. None of the characters have any arcs except for Walter. Even Buddy doesn't change. There's no significant internal struggle or external thing to overcome for Buddy. He just I love Christmas and I love my dad, but my dad doesn't really care about me back. But then he does care about me back, and I have not changed as a character at all or learned anything.
Yeah.
Jovi is the most irritating to me because she makes arbitrary decisions for the point of plot, and at the end they're like, oh, because people are people, they have to get married and have a kid because that's how the world works.
Yeah, I didn't buy that. Like when they're skating and he kisses her on the cheek and she's like, oh, you missed, and then I was like, this is not how any date like this would go.
Yeah, people don't, I don't know. It seems to me like this movie's trying to coast on Christmas spirit. And just doesn't. Now, that being said, there are some things that I did like about this movie.
Okay.
I really like that the way Christmas or the North Pole as a town or village is set up is basically a ripoff of every Rankin and Bass classic Christmas movie.
I appreciated that too.
Yeah,
yes.
with like the clay snowman Leon, and then like the way the elves, even the way they dress, like their costumes are based off of like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, the classic 60s and 50s way that Rankin and Bass dressed them. Or Rankin and Bass, I don't know how you pronounce it, but whatever.
I think, I'm not sure. I know what you're talking about, though.
You know, like the classic Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer in sort of claymation stop motion.
Yeah,
that's the way it looks.
Santa Claus is coming to town.
Yeah, even the way they like look, like the little animals, and then the way he like jumps on the iceberg to like get it drift away. Those are like iconic shots from Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Like really, really good stuff. I think my particular favorite moment is when all of a sudden like this big long thing appears out of the water, and it's like dun dun dun, all creepy and like ominous, and then it's just a narwhal that's like, bye buddy, good luck in the city. And I was like, that's an adorable narwhal. Yeah, that's an adorable narwhal, and that's the best part of the movie.
yeah. Actually, so I did want to make sure I had some things that I thought worked. That was one of them.
Yeah,
I thought that was actually pretty interesting and imaginative. And I actually did look up on Wikipedia before we recorded, and I did see that Jon Favreau actually, that was something that interested him, was taking that approach.
Yeah.
So that makes sense that would be something that actually is a stronger point of the movie, because it seems to be something that he really gravitated to.
It's really, really, like stylistically, you're like, oh, this is supposed to be the North Pole that we know from our classic.
Yeah.
Rankin and Bass Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer that we would have grown up with, right? And is now almost 40 or 50 years old from the time of this movie.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So I really appreciated that. I actually think it's the strongest part of the movie. Not even that part of the movie in terms of story. I just mean that stylistically is the strongest part of the movie.
Yeah, I agree.
Because I still feel like we're just doing elf gags at the beginning, except he hasn't left the North Pole yet.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
In terms of other things that worked,
the canon is disappointing for me there, because if it is the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer universe, then there was that one elf who wanted to become a dentist.
Right, yeah.
And so if Buddy is not good at making toys, why the fuck can't he do something else if there was that one elf who... So that's what I'm saying. Like, if we're going to make it stylistically canon and we're not going to make it story canon, like, fuck.
Right, yeah. No, I totally get that too.
And that's a nitpick thing, but it's still like, come on, man.
Yeah. Some of the other... There were some gags in the movie that I thought were kind of fun. The snowball gag. I mean, it's not like hilarious, but I was like, oh, okay, this is fun, yeah.
The problem I have with that scene is that's the end of Michael's arc.
Yeah.
He doesn't like Buddy. He gets introduced to Buddy, doesn't like Buddy. Oh, he's so weird. Oh, I'm getting bullied. Snowballs. Buddy does this awesome automatic snowball firing thing, which I did think it is fun to watch. And the kids get their comeuppance as they get railed on by snowballs, and then they're friends. And that's the end of Michael's arc.
Exactly, yeah. I think what I liked about that sequence, watching it this time, is just the snowball fight itself. Like, when they're pinned down behind the rock, it's just this barrage of snowballs that you would not see. But there's something I found that very amusing. Like, it's just like, let's just have them completely bombarded by snowballs.
Yeah.
And it's something that's, like, it's a fun sequence. The other one that I actually thought was a fun sequence was the one with Buddy in the mailroom, where he's trying to connect with his coworker, and then he pours alcohol in his coffee, and then they're lying on the packages of mail, completely wasted.
Yeah, just wasted. That's
that. I thought that was actually, a pretty like funny sequence, but it's also one where you actually have two characters that are actually being quite vulnerable with each other in a way.
It's like the only time in the movie this happens.
Yeah. Maybe that's why it seemed like it was, it seemed like it worked. Yeah, that's it.
Another problem that I have is Walter's wife and Michael's mom. I don't even know her name.
Emily.
Okay, she has zero to do with this movie.
Yeah, exactly. I know. I felt that too.
And I find that irritating, because she's an actress who's in a bunch of stuff and is actually like really, really good.
Well, there's a very obvious scene to me, which I thought would have been really interesting, and that's the scene where he's trying to explain to her that he had a kid.
Yeah.
Like, to me, that's pretty earth-shattering stuff.
Yeah, all of a sudden
Like,
you find out I had another kid that I didn't know about who just came out and found me.
Like we catch the end of it, we catch the tail end of it, but I remember watching that and going like, wait, no, there is so much, like that's interesting.
Yeah.
Like there's way, like think about if you were put yourself in that situation where you're going, wait, I have a kid. Okay, wait, how do I explain this to my spouse? Like,
and how is my spouse going to react? Like there's a lot of material and meat to that kind of conversation.
That to me was a very obvious choice for a scene, and maybe not for like a family movie that's supposed to be fun and goofy, but to me I thought,
but you can I think that would, even like a family movie that's fun and goofy can still have more emotional, heartfelt moments, right? Where maybe that's her arc, and it doesn't have to be the majority of the story, but the arc has to be like, how does this new person fit into our family? Because immediately Emily is just like, well, that's wonderful, let's meet him.
Yeah, exactly. And I just thought like
conflict over.
Exactly. I mean, I have no doubt that like she would go, okay, yeah, like, okay, I can accept that. Okay, yeah, like you had a different life before. That's fine. I just felt like it was too easy. Like even then, if you're someone who's mature enough to accept that, there's still an element of like, okay, wait a minute, but now there's something else about this person that I just found out, and I just found.
And he's got this weird elf thing that she doesn't seem to like mind. Everyone else seems to mind except for her.
Yeah. It's true.
Yeah. I have the same thing with Jovi. Jovi is like supposed to be, that's Zooey Deschanel's character, doesn't seem to like Christmas, and yet she's singing a Christmas song in the shower.
Yeah.
But why?
Exactly.
Like,
exactly.
What's the arc there? Why not have her, like, if you're going to have, like, the answer was Christmas spirit, then Jovi to me seems like the perfect solution to be, like, she's the Scrooge in this story. Bah humbug.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Or if you want to go, like, a little bit more into that, you have, like, Walter as, like, business Scrooge. Right? So he's, like, the miser. And then you have Jovi as the anti-Christmas part of the Scrooge. So she's the bah humbug. So we have like the miser and the bah humbug as represented by these two characters, and then Christmas spirit is the thing that turns them around.
Right.
If you want to go that route. I just think that would have been at least a stronger, because I feel like that was what they were trying to do, but it doesn't get there.
Yeah, they definitely set that up. But what's and they don't ever go like, well, why did she feel that? Like again, there's an obvious scene there.
Yeah.
Of a like, it's your obligatory, in every Christmas movie has these scenes, so they can be a little cliche, but they're like just the question of like why does she work here?
Yeah.
Why is she why is she depressed about it?
Why did they turn off her
water? She
seems
to have a chip on her shoulder. What's going on?
Why did
that's ever explored?
Yeah, why did they turn her water off? Like, who is this woman other than just object of desire for Buddy? Literally, like, I'm pulling in my feminist philosophy here. She exists on screen solely for Buddy to have a goal.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's no, like, that doesn't even develop. Like, they go on one really kind of strange date, and
then they're married.
Yeah.
And they have a baby.
Yeah, it doesn't follow any logic. I think my favorite line of hers actually is, because to me watching it, you could tell she's trying really hard to make it convincing, but she doesn't believe it herself. And it's the one where she's like, what is it? Singing loud for best way to spread Christmas cheer.
Singing loud for all to hear.
And the way she says it is so insincere.
Oh, yeah.
It's just
that's what I'm saying, man.
It cracks me up. Yeah.
This I don't know. This one thing that I really didn't find believable is how Buddy as an elf seems to be so unaware of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Do they not teach like skills? I don't know. It just seems to me like if he works in Santa's workshop, and obviously we know he's a bad elf, but like he would have learned things about productivity, about how things need to happen. Like, I don't know. It just seems like he seems like they're trying to be like, well, he's like approaching the world with this wide-eyed wonder of a child, and you're like, yeah, but he's not. He's just stupid and ignorant.
Yeah, so I think this is when I was trying to explain before why I didn't think it was funny. It's that. So I've recently been reading Don Quixote. Mm-hmm. Don Quixote there's actually a similarity in that Don Quixote sort of like exists in his own reality.
But he is ignorant because he chooses to be.
Well, so that's the thing. The humor there is how he rationalizes it. It's how he's like, he goes, and someone will point out to him like, those aren't giants, those are windmills, and he'll come up with a reason. Like he comes up with this exactly. But with Buddy, it's just like he just doesn't know, and he's just an idiot.
Yeah,
and that's why it's not funny, is because he's literally he shows up in this place and just starts acting like a child without any reason, and it doesn't make sense because. Why wouldn't he have had some kind of like basic sense of how to behave, how to interact? Like all the humor is that like, oh, he comes from the North Pole, and in the North Pole they're happy all the time, and now he's in New York where that's just not an acceptable attitude. But he's just acting in ways that are not even related to that. They're just being ridiculously like obnoxious.
Yeah, it's not a case of like. Because doing the Don Quixote thing might have been hilarious if he's like rationalizing it the whole time to himself.
Yeah.
That could have been its own thing. The other thing that could have been funny is like, what if he knows all these things, but he's not socialized in the same environment, which I think is what they're going for. But he still has like social graces and whatnot. He's just not socialized the same way. So certain things are lost on him. There's a lot of humor you can get out of that is less slapstick and more like, oh, he just doesn't get it because... It's not a thing that they do, right? Anyone who's lived in another country will tell you there are certain things that you just pick up on that you have to learn by being there, because if you're socialized in one place, then those things are lost on you when you move to another place.
Yeah, exactly. Like even then, like I think he would have actually a sense of awareness based on like where he's come from. Like I'm thinking of other movies where the joke is kind of like the fool who can't really fit into society. I'm thinking of like Jacques Tati movies. He's kind of like this, like Charlie Chaplin, the tramp from Charlie Chaplin, like a Mr. Bean character. But in the case of like a Charlie Chaplin character or a Jacques Tati's Monsieur Hulot, part of the humor is that like he does things like he gets himself into these weird situations, but he tries to maintain his dignity. Yeah. Even if he does something really embarrassing, the humor is that he like tries to cover it up.
Oh, that sounds classic, like Mr. Bean, like.
Yeah.
Like the way like something will happen and then Mr. Bean will do this like shifty glance. Like there's a car on fire behind him and Mr. Bean will do this shifty glance and be like, wow, I don't know anything about that. I mean, obviously he doesn't talk. And then just sort of like strolls away casually.
Exactly. It's like they know they've broken some social taboo or done, but then the humor is how they try to then like move past it. It's the same with Don Quixote. He does these really ridiculous things, like say like a wash basin is a helmet, and then later he like when even people are like, no, dude, that's not a helmet. He's like, no, it is a helmet. It is a helmet, and I will prove to you that it's a helmet. And so it's this mixture of conviction and then also this like need to maintain their dignity. Yeah. That's where the humor comes in. Whereas with Elf, it's just like he's just doing these things and has no awareness.
And it comes across as not funny. Now, I will say like part of this I think is this is also a kids movie, because like my last complaint was going to be the fact that Buddy only eats candy. I'm like, dude, if he's a human, he's going to get scurvy. Like if elves have a different metabolic system that requires candy for them to live, right, in a way that is different from humans, then Buddy's gonna get scurvy. Like that's not how that works.
Exactly. I feel like someone might say like, oh well, but it's like you're being too literal with it. But I feel like where the humor. But I feel like even in these cases where there's like it's supposed to be a humorous situation that involves some fantasy world, to me, a lot of the humor actually comes in how you reconcile these things. Because to me, that would be a funny thing where it's like growing up, oh, the elves eat candy, and then they figure out like, oh, he can't eat candy. He has to. We have to source. Like we now have to start importing vegetables.
That's a hilarious idea. Now the North Pole all of a sudden has to import vegetables for this one stupid little kid.
Yeah, like to me, like there's other like world building things there that you can use. Like when you start figuring out. Like this is something like in Douglas Adams' Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. That's what a lot of the humor is. He's just going like, if you imagine this intergalactic, vast empire, and then you just take things that we do and then sort of give it to this. It's funny. Like there's a whole. Yeah, like there's actually something that's kind of comical about it.
Yeah, like the almost like if you have this fantastic space agency or whatever, they're still bureaucratic.
Exactly.
Like it's still going to be just the same bullshit, but now on this way different scale, which I also think is super funny. My favorite example from Douglas Adams is when he talks about time travel. And he's like, it's like the problem with time travel isn't becoming your own grandfather. Any well-adjusted family can deal with that. The problem is grammatical tenses. Right? How do you talk about something that you're going to do in the future if it's in your past? Like, I will have gone to have to do that sometime, maybe. And you're like, how do you deal with those tenses? It's like the grammar is actually like harder to wrap your head around than the fucking, grandfather paradox. That's funny. That's why I think like this whole elf thing, like, or if you take this fantastical situation, how are you going to deal with it? We're different in terms of our humor. And I do think this is a kid's show. I do think that, or movie, and I do think that like we are maybe overanalyzing and being a little too literal. But I also think like it's just, my biggest problem is it's just not funny the way that it should be. And like maybe I'm not the target demographic, fine, but it's just not funny in the way it should be. And it doesn't resolve in any meaningful way.
Yeah. Just one more thing on that world building thing. Another example of a like family movie that does that, takes those ideas, is Toy Story. Like if you think of the opening of Toy Story when there's like a committee of toys dealing with like that is hilarious.
There's a new toy coming. It's his birthday.
Yeah.
We gotta
As a kid, you maybe can't appreciate all of the nuance of it, but it's still funny. Like you can still get some of the jokes, and then as an adult, you go like you realize there's more to it than just like some of the jokes that are like. I'm also thinking there's other little subtle jokes of like Potato Head like taking his mouth off and like kissing there's like kiss butt, ass butt. Like there's okay, you can sneak those jokes in too. But my point is basically that again in world building, it's not necessarily something that I think it's something you can justify having in family movies, even if kids aren't going to get all of it, because there's still something there that I think they'll recognize. Even then, it's like it's entertaining.
This one's okay. I mean, it certainly was entertaining, but it wasn't great.
I don't even know if I'd say it was entertaining.
Oh, wow. This time I watched it, because this is the second time I've seen it, it was way worse than the first time I watched it.
Yeah.
The first time I watched it, it wasn't terrible. This time I was like,
Yeah. So. I'm not a fan.
Yeah. I think we should get into pitches.
Let's get into pitches.
How are you feeling about yours? Do you want to go first?
I'm feeling okay about mine. I'm happy to go first.
Okay, go for it.
Okay. So I took the direction of, well, okay, I guess we'll figure it out. I guess it's safe to assume that there's no North Pole and there's no Santa Claus. Basically, it starts off, I thought the main character should have been Walter, who's the James Caan character.
So you went like straight Scrooge, Ebenezer Scrooge.
I went straight Scrooge, more or less, yeah. If I was to pitch it, like it's kind of like Elf meets Camera Buff meets Bos Kiarostami's Close Up, maybe.
Holy crap.
Yeah, but I tried to keep it funny. It's a little more of psychological, maybe. Anyway, so Walter, he works for, in my version, he produces Christmas movies.
For unnamed Christmas card movie company.
Yeah, I don't even name the company. But yeah, he makes TV movies that are Christmas movies. Anyway, they may make Christmas cards too, but that's not part of the story. He's so busy. So he's like, it starts off with him. He's working. He's busy. And his family's basically falling apart. Like his marriage is falling apart, and he doesn't spend time with his kids. And he's kind of getting a little bitter about this. Anyway, one day, some guy shows up to work dressed as an elf, and he thinks it's a Christmas gram. And he's like, okay, this is kind of embarrassing, but whatever. Let's get it over with. And this person basically says like, oh, I'm your son. And Walter's like, okay, this is just a horrible joke. Like security, like get him out of here. Anyway, he keeps bumping into this guy, and this guy's constantly going like, no, Walter, like I'm your son. And he mentions the name. I think it's Susan in the movie. Anyway, he like mentions the name of his mother, and he recognizes it. So finally he goes, okay, you know what? Let's do a DNA test. And how about this? We'll do a DNA test. And if I'm able to prove that you're not my son, will you leave me alone? And he goes, okay, fine. So they go to do a DNA test, and it turns out that Buddy is indeed his son. Mm-hmm. So now this is the scene. Remember before when I mentioned, there's this obvious scene where he's gonna explain. So this is, I would insert that scene here. He goes and he's gonna explain to Emily and remember that like his marriage is on the rope. So he's going in, and the way I would do it is he basically starts off by saying like, look, I have to explain something to you. I have another son. Now, what happens is she interprets this as him admitting to having an affair.
Ooh.
But he feels bad about it. He doesn't realize that she's misinterpreted it that way. And so he just gets more and more apologetic.
Yeah.
By the time he's figured out that she misunderstood him, like that he actually, it wasn't infidelity, it was just before they were together, he tries to explain it to her, but she's so upset.
Yeah.
That she's like, no, don't make excuses for it. Like, no, you knew it was wrong. And she leaves. So the whole joke with the scene is like, it's a misunderstanding.
Yeah.
Anyway, he gets an angry phone call from his sister-in-law. He's like, why would you do this to her? And he's like, no, you're not understanding. This isn't what happened. Anyway, so now like it's Walter, he's on his own. His wife has like taken their son and left and go to live with her sister, basically. So Walter finds Buddy sleeping in a display booth of a store, and he's like I can't, like, I gotta help this guy. So in my version, Walter's a little bit more conscientious. He's just like ended up in a position in life where he's overworked and he's dissatisfied, but he still feels this sense of responsibility for people. And he's like, okay, it's technically my son. I'm gonna help him out. So he takes him to a psychiatrist to like, maybe what this guy needs is help, because this guy is adamant that he was actually raised by elves in the North Pole, and he feels guilty that this is a result of him abandoning him as a child. So we take him to the psychiatrist, and he explains all this to the psychiatrist and says like, look, I feel like I didn't know, and now I feel like I've created a problem unknowingly, and I feel like I owe it to this person to help him out. And this person's like, well, like, that's very noble of you. And if he is your son and you feel that responsibility, then yeah, by all means. Like, I think if you feel like obligated to do it, then yeah, you should do that. So he basically says like, okay, Buddy, you shouldn't be sleeping like. He's like, where do you live? And Buddy's not able to say, so he assumes that Buddy's homeless.
Yeah.
So he's like, okay, well, why don't you come and like stay with me? My wife and my son have left. There's space there. You can come and live with me for a little bit, and we can figure things out. Anyway, he takes Buddy with him to go see Emily to like clear things, to be like, look, let me just introduce you to him. When she sees that he's like actually like a full-grown adult and he's able to explain to her, she recognizes like, okay, I misunderstood what you were saying. But now that they've been apart, it's not been very long, but she's like, I'm starting to think this might be good for us, just to have a bit of distance for a while, so that we can work it out. And this is where they actually have a frank conversation about like, it's not been really working well. Michael is struggling as a result of it. So maybe this distance is actually a good thing. So Walter goes, okay, fine. Maybe you're right. I'm going to let Buddy stay with me for a bit till I can help him like get back on his feet. Emily's also a little concerned that Buddy's like possibly unstable and possibly like just not safe to be around. But she recognizes that like Walter feels obligated to help him. Anyway, Walter's like goes through the process of helping Buddy, but he starts feeling like this is actually like documentary worthy.
Ooh, yeah.
So he starts documenting Buddy going through this process of sort of unpacking his understanding that he is actually raised by elves.
Yeah.
Now, as a result of this, he ends up bringing Michael starts spending time with him as well, and Buddy and Michael get along. And so Walter's like, oh, now he's involving his son in the process, and it seems like he's able to reconnect with his son this way. Anyway, one day, Emily picks up Michael from school, and what's been happening is Buddy actually started going to the school, meeting Michael at the school, and then actually walking him home. So she actually gives them both a ride, and on this car ride, basically like Michael and Buddy like mention that they're like doing a movie with their dad. So she talks to Walter and she's like, "Are you sure this is a good idea? Like doing a movie about this?
Yeah.
Don't you like?" She says she's worried that you're basically giving him you're just indulging his fantasy. If he sort of has this like fantasy that he lives in, aren't you just like, by making a movie about it, like he seems really excited about it, but aren't you just indulging him? And he basically like this sort of this becomes a bit of a contentious thing between the two of them, because he's like, no, you don't understand. Like, I actually think like this is actually like, I think he's more interested in trying to like actually work through these things now. And she's like, no, but I think I don't know if you're actually helping him
like
with
exploiting,
this. Yeah. So it becomes a question of like exploitation. You know, is he exploiting him, or is he actually trying to help him? Anyway, there's now a breakthrough with Buddy. This time when visiting the psychiatrist, he seems to like recognize, like he has a moment where he's like, oh, like maybe that particular memory, I imagined it.
Yeah.
Maybe I made that up. So it seems like he's actually changing. Anyway, one day, again, Emily picks up Michael, takes Buddy along. They go for donuts afterwards, and they're chatting. But something about Buddy is like, he almost seems too self-aware all of a sudden. Like, he's changed enough, but she's like, okay, wait a minute. There's something that seems a bit different, like, about his change. So she's like, here, I can drop you off at Walter's place. He's like, no, that's okay, just drop me off at the subway. So she drops him off at the subway, and basically later she phones Walter and is like, hey, do you really know like who Buddy is? Like, have you done any background research on this guy? And Walter's like, I know he's my son, and I know that I wasn't there for him, so I that's good enough for me. And she's like, I think we should look into like who this guy actually is. So one day, Walter goes to leave for work, says he's going to leave for work, and waits for Buddy to leave, and he ends up following Buddy. And he finds that Buddy he follows him all the way to this like suburb outside the city, and Buddy walks up to this house where there's like another older couple, and he greets them, and he actually says, "Hi, Mom and Dad," like as he's walking in the door. What he takes us back to Emily, and through some connection, they're able to find out that Buddy was actually adopted, and he actually lives outside the city with his adopted parents, and that he's probably been making all of this elf stuff up. So one day, Walter and Emily confront, like they basically, Buddy comes back and they like sit him down and are like, okay, look, we know that you live outside the city, and we know you've been making this all up. And Buddy basically admits to the fact that like the whole elf thing was all a ruse. He'd made the whole thing up. Yeah. And he was really just trying to get like, it's true, Walter is his father. He found out at a certain point that like this guy was his father. And he was actually just like really angry and bitter and resentful about it, that he thought what he would do is he would just basically play this really horrible joke on him and just see how far it went.
That's so cynical.
But in the process, he found that he actually liked Walter, because he had this idea that Walter was actually like
an asshole for giving him up.
He thought Walter would just blow him off. But the fact that Walter actually stuck with it, he actually felt like once he'd committed to it, he felt like he had to stick with it. He couldn't. And then when Walter started making a movie about it, he felt like he had to go along with it. And what's even more, he was trying to break in as an actor. Yeah. So this whole thing was basically, he realized like, oh, there's a way for me to actually get to know my dad, like my biological father, who I've discovered I actually really like, and I can actually get this acting role. And I might be able to actually like make a name for myself this way. And he feels really bad. He feels really guilty that he took advantage of Walter. Anyways, so he leaves. It's clear that he's like offended Walter and Emily.
Yeah.
Anyway, Walter's like maybe like a week or two later, Walter's going through the footage and he's really going like, can I make this movie? Can I finish this movie? And Emily's like, I don't know why you're doing this. Like, you should just drop it. And she starts saying like, you've always had this inability to recognize when it's time to say that if something's not working, to accept that. And he realizes what she's talking about is maybe their marriage. And so now they have another real conversation about it. And she goes like, look, I really love you, but it's possible that it's just not working. And in fact, every time we've argued, every time we've tried to make it better, we end up just arguing again. And it's taking a toll on Michael. And they talk about it. And basically by the end of the scene, they recognize that like, actually maybe it's better like for them to actually split up for the sake of their son Michael. If they were to agree on like split custody, then they would probably be able to make it better for their son Michael.
And maybe even get along with each other better.
And that's it. They had been trying to stay together because they felt like it was going to be better for Michael. And now they realize like it may be for Michael's sake, it's probably better that we don't.
Yeah.
Even though it's not ideal, it might be the best thing. Mm-hmm. So we cut to like in like a year later, December, the following year, they're signing the forms to like say like Michael's joint custody. They have now like officially divorced. Walter goes off on his own way. Emily and Michael go off on their way. And Walter, as he's going off, walking around, we'll say it's New York, he sees Buddy, but now Buddy's not dressed up in an elf costume. He's just like working. He's like doing a sign thing on the street side or something like that.
Street corner.
Yeah. Walter comes up to him and is like, hey, and they chat for a bit, and Buddy's like, yeah, I had an audition. The audition didn't work. And he's like, I'm really sorry. And Walter's like, hey, you know what? Like, and he explains that he just like divorced with Emily, and Buddy's like, I'm sorry. Like, I hope I wasn't a part of that. And Walter's like, no. It's like, it's for the best. And Walter's like, can I buy you a cup of coffee? And so they go and they sit and they chat, and here is when Buddy basically is like, yeah, I actually like, I understand that you are upset, but I've I actually really meant what I said, where I actually thought you weren't what I was expecting. And Walter's like, you know what, like I've thought about it more, and it's like, I realized I was in jeopardy of losing my own family. Like they have this like real good moment together, and that's where the movie ends, is them like just having coffee together.
So yours isn't even necessarily a Christmas movie, other than the fact that it's just like Elf.
Yes, but it takes place exactly. But it takes place around Christmas. Yeah. Anyway,
yours is much more cynical, much darker than the original movie. I think it's smarter. Like it's much more of a family drama.
Mm-hmm. That's what I mean. I was hoping that I could at least sort of maintain some of the like situational humor, at least in the scene where he's like trying to explain like, no, I have a kid. She's like, what? You cheated on me? No.
Yeah. No, I think that works really well. I like how really real your characters feel.
Thank you.
There's much more motivation that way. Yeah. I went a bit different with my pitch. My pitch goes like Jovi's the main character.
Oh, okay.
So the story starts with Jovi. She's working at a store, and she like immediately, we can get some background stuff, but she immediately meets a new person at the store she works at.
Oh, okay.
And it's another elf that supposedly just got hired named Buddy, right? And so she's like, okay, that's a bit of a strange name in these days and age, but they have the same sort of interactions that they have, but we get them from Jovi's point of view. And we see that after that, Jovi goes home. She lives in New York. She has no real family to speak of. She lives on her own. There's books piled everywhere in her apartment and like papers and whatnot. And while she's at home, they turn her water off.
Oh, okay.
And so she's like, well, balls. And so she returns to the store and like showers. And while she's in the shower, she's singing. Not a Christmas song. But instead of being like creepy in the bathroom, Buddy hears her singing from outside the bathroom.
Oh, okay.
But we don't see that. And so she walks out and he's like, yo, I heard you singing. And that was awesome. And she's like, well, you just like waited for me. And she's like, well, I just heard the singing. Like, I didn't want to be creepy, so I figured I would wait. And the only person who was in there is you. And she's like, yeah, explains that they turned her water off. And she's like, yeah, I really like singing. He's like, you should sing Christmas songs, because Christmas songs are all about like cheer and whatnot. And she's like, we're not at work. You don't have to like do that. Right. And he's like, no, but Christmas is the best. And it's amazing. And she's like, I don't really like Christmas, or like the meaning or spirit of Christmas, whatever that is. And Buddy's confused and explains that, like, she's like, I live in New York and I work in retail, and I've seen like how consumerist people are, and I see the greed that goes into the holidays and the general lack of civility people have, not just at Christmas but all year round. And so I just don't really believe in it. Like, it's not that I have anything against people believing in Christmas, and it's not that I'm like a Scrooge. It's just not for me. So the two talk on their way back to Jovi's apartment, and we find out that Jovi works at the store but hates it. And the reason she works at the store is because she's trying to finish nursing school.
Oh, okay.
So when Buddy tells her that he's an elf from the North Pole, Jovi's like, yeah, I was wondering why you wouldn't drop that. I also don't believe you, because that's bullshit. There is no North Pole. There is no Santa Claus. She's like, I think you're maybe a little like nuts, but you're harmless. So she's like maybe a little messed up in the head, but she's like, maybe you have like some kind of illness or like a distraction, or you're just putting this on real thick, but whatever. Anyway, she offers, because she thinks that he might be ill. She's like, let me take you, instead of walking to my place, let me take you home. So it's late now. So she walks him back to Walter's place, and they find his real dad, which is why he came there and whatnot. And he's telling her all about the North Pole. Jovi meets Buddy's family, including Michael, and that's all the same, except, Howard is less of a Scrooge and whatnot. And the next day, or Walter, sorry, not Howard. Walter is less of a Scrooge. So they are like, oh, thank you so much. And she's like, yeah, I think he's a little weird. And they're like, yeah, we're still trying to figure it out. He just like showed up one day. So the next day, Jovi's at work, dreading it, because that's the day Santa's going to be there. And all the parents are going to be terrible and want their children, and they're going to be screaming and greed and whatnot, because she's not wrong. But the store, when she shows up, is all decorated. And Jovi's like, and it's because of Buddy. And Jovi tells the boss, she's like, I think Buddy is harmless, but he might be sick. Like, should we really be exploiting that? And the boss is like, yeah, we should be exploiting that. Like, look at the great work he done. This is awesome. Like, and Jovi's like, yeah, but he thinks he's an elf all the time. And the boss is like, I don't know, maybe he's just committed to the role. Maybe he's just like an actor. Like, you could learn some spirit from him. And she's like, I don't need this. So then Santa shows up, and Buddy is livid because it's not the real Santa, and like goes nuts and starts, like, they get into a real scrap. And at the end, Jovi is like doing first aid because she's a nursing student, and like helping, and walking through Buddy what she's doing. And Buddy's also not Will Ferrell. It's like, Will Ferrell just feels too old for this role. I'm thinking somebody who's more like 21, 22.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like
just someone younger. It doesn't matter who.
Yeah.
So it's not the real Santa. And Jovi's like, yeah, of course it's not the real Santa. Like, Santa doesn't exist. And he's like, you take that back. And anyway, she's like really committed to this identity. But she does first aid on him. So again, like during this time, we get Jovi more of like her backstory and how she came up in foster care. So like Buddy's not around now. This is just some background where we're just sticking with Jovi. She came up in foster care, and that it wasn't like Christmas never happened and I don't believe in it. It was just like whenever she was with each foster family, they were always did their best with her. It just like there was never really like presence or family or that holiday spirit, so it never meant anything to her.
Right.
It's not like she doesn't understand what it is. It's just not for her. It's not the way Christmas was for her. It wasn't. So it's not like she didn't have people caring for her or anything like that. I just think that's so cliche. So I'm like, I'm not doing that. So the next day, Buddy and Michael show up, but Buddy's dressed normally and is acting much more normal. And with Michael's help, they like, we want to thank you for like everything that happened with the Santa incident. Would you like to come out to dinner with both of us? So it's not a date, it's just a thank you.
Right.
And Jovi's like, yeah, sure, that sounds fine. Like, Michael is pretty normal. He's also older.
Oh, okay.
Michael's much older, and Buddy is much younger, so
got it.
Like, they're all around the same age anyway.
Less of an age gap.
Yeah, less of an age. Yeah. So I'm thinking like Michael is like 16.
Right.
Yeah. And so they're like, let's all go and we'll just have some fun and hang out. And so the three of them like go to dinner and have some fun. Then they go like skating. and just have some fun. And they even wind up going to a bar and convincing Jovi to sing. Like karaoke, and so she sings, and it's just like fun. You know what I mean? It's not a Christmas song; it's just fun, like a fun time, like 3 friends hanging out. That's the idea.
Right.
So when they get back to Buddy and Michael's place to say goodnight, Jovi is invited in, but she's like, "No thanks, like it's fine." They're like, "No, come on." And so she comes in, and then they try to invite her for Christmas when they find out she doesn't have a family, and she's like, "No, Christmas is like a time where I do like my own thing. I don't really." And Buddy gets super offended. He's like, "You don't believe in like the real meaning of Christmas," and is like, and she's like, "This is weird. Like, you let him get away with this," and they're like, "We're trying to work through it," but like, she's like, I don't want to do this. Like, it's not what I do at Christmas, and the rest of the family like respects that, but Buddy's super upset, chases after her to tell her that Christmas is like the most important thing, and she's like, "I'm no," and so she leaves, and Buddy's upset, but all of a sudden there's a commotion in the park. Like, so this is maybe like a couple days later. There's a commotion in the park, and he immediately goes because he thinks it's Santa. Basically, somebody got hit in the park because something crashed into them.
Oh, okay.
And Jovi's at home this whole time doing her Christmas thing, and the news thing plays out, and she sees Buddy on the news, and it looks like somebody got hit in the park by something, and she's like, "Ah, shit!" Like, Buddy's there, I'm gonna go help. So she winds up going out there, and Buddy is like, she meets him, and she's like, "Santa's in the park, and he like crashed, and now like somebody's in there and needs first aid, but like you have to make sure nobody meets Santa." And Jovi's like, "Well, this is clearly like some kind of weird delusion, but okay." So she does the only thing she can think of, which is sing a Christmas carol. Right? It's the only song she can think of to try and distract people. So she just started singing Christmas carols, and people join in and they get distracted. Then at the end, after a little while, Buddy comes back out, and he reemerges with a homeless dude who's injured. But he's been given first aid in the way that Jovi gave Buddy first aid earlier. Yeah, so he's like, "Oh, that's really good." And Buddy's like, "You came out, like you do believe in Santa, and like you do believe," and Jovi's like, "No, I don't believe in Santa. I don't think whatever that was Santa. But what I do believe in is that you want to help people, and that you always want to do the best by everyone you meet. That's everything that I've seen so far. So I came to help you, not because I believe in Christmas or anything like that. But I think that you want to see the best in people. So that's what I believe in." She asks Buddy what was in the park and claims it was Santa, but she doesn't believe that. And then she goes to take Buddy home, and this time she decides to stay with the family when they invite her in, on the condition that they don't sing any Christmas songs. And that's the end.
Nice.
So the basic idea there is that from Jovi's perspective, and even from the movie's perspective, we will never know if there is actually a Santa or Christmas or North Pole.
Right. Yeah. I know that's interesting. Yeah, because you've kept it open. Yeah. I guess the idea is you keep it open so that you could interpret it both ways. So it could be or it couldn't
be. I don't care.
Right. Yeah. Oh,
and
funny.
The point is never to explain it.
Oh, funny.
In my mind, if you want my canon, there is no Santa.
Yes.
There's no Santa. There's no North Pole. Buddy is just like really delusional. But he's still harmless.
Yeah. I like both our takes, we sort of like tried to psychologize this character. Yeah, in my case, it was like he was just making it up all along.
See, if I was going to go into it, I would have probably had it actually like they go to a psych ward or something like that and find out that Buddy just is living in this kind of weird delusion that he's made up. But he's not a harmless person. He just...
he is a harmless person.
Yeah, he is harmless. He just needs to get help to try and like sort him into reality, and like he's been slowly reintegrating.
Right.
And that's why like he's living with his family now and stuff like that, like so that he can help reintegrate. Yeah, that's all.
Yeah. No, I like that. That was good.
Yeah. I like both our pitches. I think they work really well in very different ways. I tried to keep mine like still a Christmas movie that's happy and fun, but with our main character who's still like deliberately anti-Christmas. Yeah. Like Jovi doesn't change to be more like, "Oh, I really needed Christmas spirit all along, and now I'm happy." Like Christmas is something that she still does on her own. And she doesn't wind up believing in Santa or change her mind. She just winds up connecting with a person who's really, really interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
And I also didn't want it to be romantic.
Yeah, no, I like that. I thought that was a good take.
Yeah. with the mystery all the time. Yeah, I just like yours because I thought yours was really real. Like it reminded, like it's almost not even a Christmas story. It just takes place at Christmas.
Yeah, it was fun. It was as I was writing it, I was like, oh, it's kind of like, it's like Camera Buff in the sense that it's a guy who basically he starts making this movie and then he gets kind of obsessed with it.
Yeah.
But then also Close Up, the Abbas Kiarostami movie, is about a guy who basically tries to impersonate a famous person and then it basically just stays with his family. And it's actually a real story.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting movie. Anyway, but yeah, I was, as I was writing mine, I was like, oh, actually, I could totally, if there wasn't, I would consider actually making that into a movie. I actually think it could work really well as like a low budget.
Well, maybe we should make that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone's going to be like, hey, you just
did that. Yeah.
Elf, but kind of not really.
Well, there are lots of movies out there that are like,
yeah, it's true.
This movie, but kind of not really. Where can people find you?
I'm on Twitter at Nate Draper. I'm on Letterboxd at Draper Nate. And my website is www.nathanieldraper.com.
You can find my band Robot Philosopher anywhere you listen to dope music. We're also on Instagram posting stuff about our new album that's coming out soon. Yeah, very excited about that. I'm
very excited, yeah.
You can check out our other channel, the CineMasters, where you can check lots of scripted content, of which I'm trying to rope Nate into doing something. And you can check out more podcasts right here. Don't forget to subscribe so you'll never miss out on another episode. And thanks so much for chilling with us.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
Peace.